So check this out. We are currently watching the same exact drive on two different vehicles. In the top left is the Tesla Cybertruck, and in the bottom right is the Tesla Model 3 Performance, and both are running the latest full self-driving software, version 13.2.8. Now, what's funny is in the Model 3, the Tesla can actually put itself into reverse, back out, put itself into drive, all from the parking spot. I don't touch the brake, accelerator, or anything. I just touch one button on the screen. Whereas the Cybertruck, I actually have to put the vehicle into reverse or drive. I then have to turn on FSD, and the Cybertruck can start driving from a stop, but normally you actually have to hit the accelerator to get it going. Now, you'll notice that the Model 3 actually makes a mistake and goes the wrong way, but it does correct itself. But it leads to this drive having 0 interventions and 0 disengagements, meaning the Model 3 made it all the way to the destination with me doing absolutely nothing besides turning the system on. The Cybertruck, on the other hand, did not make a mistake because I was in control and started the drive, but I had to put the car into reverse and then into drive and then engage full self-driving from there. Funny enough, right in the beginning of the video, there's a cyclist behind us in the Cybertruck. I don't know if it's easy to see or not, but the Cybertruck is driving so slow in the parking lot that this bicycle is actually catching up to us. And that is one of my biggest full self-driving complaints in the Cybertruck, is that it is simply far too slow in pretty much every maneuver it makes. Now, throughout this video, you will also see little timers that I put up here and there to show the difference in how fast the Cybertruck versus the Model 3 get up to certain speeds, and this is just to give us an idea of how different they really are. Now, the funny part about this is that I actually found the differences were not that huge. The Model 3 would usually make it up to the target speed a few seconds faster than the Cybertruck. Why then does it feel so much worse when I'm driving the Cybertruck versus driving the Model 3 on the exact same route? Honestly, I'm not really sure. Looking back at this video, I feel like if I was just watching these videos and that was all I had to go off of, I would say it wasn't very different. But the fact is, sitting in the driver's seat, you can feel the slowness. You can feel the difference in the way that the Cybertruck is driving, and it is unfortunately a worse experience. Now, eventually, I assume the Cybertruck will catch up and reach parity with Model 3 and Model Y, but if Tesla really does need driving miles in order to get enough data to make these systems work, then it may never get there. Cybertruck, even if it doubles or triples in popularity, will never reach the volume that Model 3 and Model Y will. Model 3 and Y will simply always have significantly more miles on the road than Cybertruck or Model S or Model X at this point. Now, unfortunately, at this turn here, I had to have a disengagement in the Cybertruck. As I said before, the Model 3 didn't need any help, but here the Cybertruck was going to turn right out in front of somebody. You can see them coming up on the right now, and I turned on FSD again so the Cybertruck could take over and make this turn and do the maneuver, but it was going to pull out in front of them. Now, the road we're driving on here is only supposed to be 35 miles per hour, but you can see even though we are going 7 or 8 miles per hour over the speed limit, this person is still getting away from us. They are going significantly more than 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. So if they were going the speed limit, that would have been an appropriate left turn to take in front of them. But because they were speeding so much, I made the right decision in hitting the brake and stopping the Cybertruck from cutting them off, or even worse, avoiding a potential collision. Now, I don't believe the Cybertruck would actually have collided with that vehicle. I think it either would have hit its brakes at the last second, kind of freaking them out, but not actually making contact, or been really rude and gotten in front of them, and they would have probably slammed on their brakes and honked at us. Now, I did keep both vehicles in standard for the duration of this drive, just to keep everything comparable. There was one point closer to the end where I moved the Model 3 up to the hurry mode, and I did the exact same thing for the Cybertruck, but I don't feel like it made all that big of a difference. The problem with that section is it was slightly hilly, and I've noticed that when FSD is going up a hill, it likes to slow down. And I get it, you do have reduced visibility, but the slowdowns in FSD in that scenario are just a little too much, and so I try to speed the vehicle up. Now, at this point, the speed limit is actually 25 miles per hour, and I have my offset set to 15% over the speed limit. That doesn't mean that FSD is always going to drive 15 miles per hour over the speed limit, but it means that the vehicle has the ability to go up to 15% more than the posted speed limit. This is a really good option to fit in with local traffic, but it's not for everybody, and you can adjust this in your settings if you have a Tesla. But what is really weird in the Cybertruck, I have no idea why this happened, it was routinely going more than 15% over the speed limit. I'm not sure why this happened, and it didn't happen in the Model 3. I'm not complaining too much because the speeds were still mostly appropriate in my opinion, but it was a weird thing that I saw that I have not really noticed before. The audio you're hearing is also from the Cybertruck, and yeah, you'll probably notice a lot of rattles and a lot of squeaks, and it's just another one of my kind of negatives for the Cybertruck. These things were not present when I first purchased it, but have developed over time. I've talked to Tesla about it, but they basically said I have too many miles and the Cybertruck is too old at this point for this to be covered under warranty, so it's not something I've had them deal with yet. I do think I could pretty simply go around the vehicle, push on parts, find the squeaky parts, and fix it myself, but for such an expensive vehicle that's still under the bumper-to-bumper warranty, I just don't think that that's something I need to be doing. Now at this three-way stop, the Cybertruck gets to 0 and then continues pretty well. And I set the timer to show when we get to 20 miles per hour to compare it to the Model 3 Performance. But unfortunately at the same intersection, which you'll see in the Model 3 here in just a second, the Model 3 had to compete with another vehicle. And so it's not really an apples to apples comparison. Even having to deal with another vehicle, the Model 3 got up to 20 miles per hour at pretty much the exact same time as the Cybertruck did. Now you'll see on the left, the Cybertruck is merging onto the highway and it's a bit slow, but you have to go around a big bend, and I don't really blame the Cybertruck for this. It is kind of a tough intersection, and FSD is not going to use anywhere near the full capability of the Tesla acceleration, even though sometimes it should. Now, the timer I'm showing is how long it took FSD to get to 62 miles per hour. And is there a reason that I picked exactly 62 miles per hour? Not really, but just to mostly show the difference in these two vehicles. The Cybertruck took 39 seconds to get up to 62 miles per hour on a 65 mile per hour highway where local traffic is routinely driving 70 to 80 miles per hour. In contrast, which you'll see in just a minute, the Tesla Model 3 gets up to that same speed in 29 seconds, 10 seconds less than the Cybertruck. And you'll see the Cybertruck, for whatever reason, just wants to stay at a slower speed pretty much this whole time. I'm not sure why it did this. It's a clear, sunny day, there's no traffic, but it's just what the Cybertruck decided to do. The Model 3, on the other hand, when it gets to the highway, does a much better job. You can see the Model 3 stopping at the three-way stop sign here. Again, it gets up to 20 miles per hour in almost the exact same time as the Cybertruck did, even though it was waiting for another vehicle. Now, I didn't go from 0 to 20 miles per hour. I started the timer when the vehicles hit 1 mile per hour. Otherwise, the Model 3 would have been way behind because, of course, it was waiting its turn to get through the stop sign. And now you can see the Model 3 merging onto the highway here, and it begins moving over at right around 47 to 48 miles per hour, which is pretty similar to the Cybertruck, but still a little too slow in my opinion. If there are no vehicles around, it's not the end of the world, but merging onto the highway, you really should be at highway speeds within, say, plus or minus 5 miles per hour, not 20 below. With that said, the Model 3 and Cybertruck, for that matter, may have accelerated more aggressively if it was needed, but in the circumstances provided, both got onto the highway with no issues. As you can see, the Tesla Model 3 is respecting my 15% over and going well over the posted speed limit to fit in with local traffic. Now, the limit does update to 70 miles per hour at some point. I'm not sure exactly where, but again, the Model 3 is just fitting in much better here than the Cybertruck did. Now, unfortunately, on the roundabout, the Cybertruck got stuck behind a very slow semi. So with what it could do, it did perfectly fine. But again, we're going to look at the acceleration here. And I would say this time the acceleration was pretty good. Although again, in person, sitting in the Cybertruck, it just feels off. It feels clumsy. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it feels like the Cybertruck is really thinking about and calculating what it's going to do with this next move rather than being a confident driver that knows exactly what they're doing and where they're going. Now you can see that the Model 3 confidently and smoothly moves through the roundabout. Again, it didn't have to wait for a slow semi, so we can't really compare this exact roundabout on this drive, but it feels really good, and the Model 3 moves up in speed pretty similar to what the Cybertruck did here. So the comparison here, I would say they performed pretty much the same. Funny enough, on this road post-roundabout, the Tesla Model 3 actually doesn't get to as high of a speed as the Cybertruck did. But what this leads to is the Model 3 begins slowing down on this road later than the Cybertruck as well. And that makes the overall maneuver on this road feel a little bit better. Now, I did end up timing how long the turn signal was on for this right turn for each vehicle from the start of the turn signal all the way to when the vehicle got down to 0. And for the Model 3, the turn signal was on for about 13 seconds, whereas for the Cybertruck, the turn signal was on for about 15 seconds. So very comparable, but the Cybertruck turn signal was on for 15% longer. Now, you're getting a little nitpicky here, but I am trying to get these differences across to you, but I would call it similar enough. Now, this final roundabout here, the Cybertruck really impressed me, and it's hard to see from your angle, but there is a pickup truck coming from the left, and they are flying into this roundabout. And the Cybertruck could have pulled in front of it. It wouldn't have been the best maneuver, but technically it could have done it because the pickup was not in the roundabout and they would have just had to slow for us. But the Cybertruck picks them up from a great distance, waits extra long to let them fly by, and then enters the roundabout. Now, again, unfortunately, we can't really compare these roundabouts because the Cybertruck had to wait for other vehicles, whereas when the Model 3 gets to these roundabouts, it's able to just glide right through, and it does a great job. But I would say the Cybertruck also did a really nice job here, considering what it had to deal with to enter the roundabout. Now, this final stretch is the long, slightly hilly road that I talked about where I put the vehicles both in hurry mode. And funny enough, I would say both vehicles performed very similarly here. They hovered right around 40 miles per hour, plus or minus about 1 mile per hour, and it felt almost identical to me. This is really the only part of the drive where in the driver's seat, my actual feeling was that the vehicles were driving very similarly. The rest of the drive, the Model 3 just felt more smooth and more confident throughout, even though when we're looking at some of the direct comparisons here, the timings don't seem that different. Now, again, if we look at a percent difference, the percent is pretty significant, but a few seconds here and there doesn't sound like it would make that big of a difference, but it truly does. Getting to the final right turn, both vehicles do this fine. They have slightly different conditions, but they both do a really nice job. And both vehicles are able to pull into the Tesla service center. No issues there. There is a slight difference though in the parking. The Cybertruck just immediately pulls to the left and parks, unfortunately, in handicap parking. So it's not really a place that's allowed to park. Whereas the Tesla Model 3 pulls in farther and pulls into an actual parking spot that's legally allowed. It then puts itself into park. The Cybertruck just stays in drive, and the human in the driver's seat is responsible for putting the car into park if they want to park there or they can move. Now, the Model 3 did slightly park on the line, so I did end up adjusting this parking job, but if this technically was a robotaxi, the vehicle could stop there and it wouldn't really be in anyone's way. Parking is not currently a supported feature of full self-driving, so I'm not going to knock either vehicle on this one.